This video is going to have a little bit more vocab about genetics than the last video did. As we said, Gregor Mendel didn't know about DNA, he didn't know about genes, he didn't know about chromosomes. He just called things traits or characteristics of organisms, and he knew we had two different versions, but we didn't call them alleles at the time. And so now we can discuss genetics with different terms than Mendel did because we know significantly more than he did then. We know that a gene is a segment of DNA that codes for a specific trait. So say you have a whole chromosome, a gene might be located in one little part of a chromosome, and it's only a small, relatively, segment of DNA. It might still be several hundred nucleotide bases long in the DNA of the code of A's and T's and C's and G's, but of a whole chromosome, it might only be a little segment. And as we said, Mendel decided that there were different versions of a gene, and that each individual has two versions of each gene, and we call these different versions alleles. So, for example, as mentioned in the other video, if the gene is for eye color, you can have maybe a brown or blue. So it's the same trait, like same part of a person that you're discussing. It's all eye color, but there's different versions you can have. Same sort of with skin color or hair color or what have you. Everyone has a hair color. The version of that hair color gene is different, though, for everybody. And we also mentioned that Mendel came up with the law of dominance, which says that there's a dominant trait and a recessive trait. The dominant trait is that trait that is expressed whenever it is present. So anytime it is there, you have that dominant trait. It is expressed every single time. And we always represent it by a capital letter. So if we are talking again, blue eyes, brown eyes, maybe brown eyes are dominant. And you would represent that with a capital B. Usually we use the letter of the dominant trait. So blue and brown happen to have the same letter, but say we were talking flower colors and we were talking red and white, we would still use a capital R if red was dominant. For the recessive trait, the recessive trait is only expressed when the dominant is not there. So it sort of, in a way, stays in the shadows and hangs out while the dominant is present, and it only exists, you only see it when the dominant is not around. And therefore, because it is recessive, we use a lowercase b, so in the case of eye color, that might be blue. And so the combination, we said, every individual has two alleles. Each individual has two alleles, and that relates to the fact that you have chromosomes that come in pairs, homologous pairs, and you get one from your mom and one from your dad. And so the combination of which alleles you have is your genotype. All right? That is the set of all alleles an individual has for a trait. So you have a pair, and that makes up your genotype, and this is exactly what the gene says in your DNA. And you can have some combination of the various alleles. You can have two dominants, a dominant and a recessive, or two recessives. Those are the only combinations you can have. If the alleles you have is one dominant, one recessive, those are the only combinations you can get. Now, people will always ask me, yes, you can have lowercase b, capital B, but we never write it like that. It's the same combination. You have one of each. You always write the capital one first, again, because it's dominant. And so this tells you, the genotype tells you exactly what the genes say. All right? It's not what you might see on the outside of an organism, but it's what your DNA is actually saying. And so talking about genotypes, we have types of genotypes that somebody can have. You can be homozygous for a gene, and that means you have two of the same alleles. So two capital B's means you have two of the same alleles, or two lowercase b's means you have two of the recessive alleles. So we might say homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive, meaning you have two of the dominant or two of the recessive. That homo prefix means the same. Therefore, relating to the fact that you have these same alleles. You will sometimes hear individuals that are homozygous referred to as being purebred. On the other hand, when you have two different alleles for a gene, you are heterozygous. That prefix hetero meaning different. And so heterozygous individuals, you don't have to say heterozygous dominant, because we already know it implies, if you're heterozygous, that you have a dominant and a recessive. We will sometimes hear it being called being a hybrid if you have two different alleles for a gene. As opposed to the genotype, what your genes are actually saying, you also have a phenotype. The phenotype is what that physical appearance of the trait looks like from the outside. What trait do you have in an individual on the outside? And again, this is determined by what alleles you have that are present. So the two genotypes that have a dominant allele get possibly brown eyes, the dominant trait, and the individual with two recessive alleles, a homozygous recessive individual, will have blue eyes. So here we have, on the left side of this line here, we have the genotype, and that relates directly to the phenotype. It is literally the trait that it confers, what you see in the actual organism looking at them from the outside.